The first shot rang out like a death knell across the plains, and Piper James knew her time had run out. Blood soaked through her cotton dress as she spurred her exhausted mare down the narrow canyon path, the thundering hoofbeats of her pursuers echoing behind her. It was 1875, and in the unforgiving New Mexico territory, a woman alone might as well be prey. Piper had been running for 3 days since escaping her husband's ranch. 3 days of little food, less sleep, and the constant fear that Edmund would catch her before she reached the border. The bruises on her face were turning a sickly yellow-green, matching the older ones hidden beneath her clothing. Her ribs ached with each labored breath as her horse stumbled on the rocky terrain. A second bullet whizzed past her ear, and Piper ducked lower in the saddle. The mare was tiring quickly, foam flecking its mouth as they rounded a bend in the canyon. Up ahead, Piper spotted a narrow gap between 2 rock formations barely wide enough for her horse but too small for the men pursuing her on their larger mounts. "Just a little further, girl," she whispered, patting the mare's sweaty neck. She guided the exhausted animal toward the gap, praying the horse had enough strength left. As they squeezed through, Piper heard curses from behind as the men realized they'd need to find another route. It wouldn't buy her much time, but perhaps enough to find somewhere to hide. The narrow passage opened onto a small valley, green with spring grasses and dotted with scrubby junipers. In the distance, smoke rose from what appeared to be a small cabin. Piper hesitated. She'd learned the hard way that strangers couldn't be trusted, especially men. But her mare was done in, and without help, she wouldn't make it to the next town. Decision made, she nudged her horse toward the cabin. As they approached, Piper saw it was a modest but well-maintained homestead with a small corral containing 3 horses. A man in a worn leather vest was chopping wood near an outbuilding. He looked up at the sound of her approach, his hand instinctively moving toward the pistol at his hip. Piper swayed in the saddle, the blood loss and exhaustion finally catching up to her. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was the stranger running toward her, concern etched on his sun-weathered face. Quentin Payne had been enjoying the peaceful morning on his small ranch when the woman appeared like a ghost from the canyon path. One look told him she was in trouble. Blood on her dress, bruises on her face, and the way she clung desperately to her saddle horn spoke of a hard journey. When she slumped forward, Quentin moved without thinking, dropping his axe and sprinting toward her. He caught her just as she slid from the saddle, her slim body surprisingly light in his arms. Up close, he could see the ugly bruises marring what must have been a beautiful face, and a surge of anger shot through him. "Hey there, easy now," he murmured, though he knew she couldn't hear him. Blood had soaked through the left side of her dress, and her breathing was shallow. He carried her quickly to the cabin, kicking the door open with his boot. His home was simple but clean, with a main room containing a stone fireplace, wooden table, and a few chairs. A bookshelf lined one wall, unusual for a rancher but essential to Quentin. He gently laid the woman on his bed in the small adjoining room and assessed her injuries. The bullet had grazed her side, leaving an angry furrow across her ribs. With practiced hands, Quentin gathered clean cloths, water, and the bottle of whiskey he kept for medicinal purposes. He hesitated before removing her dress but knew the wound needed tending. As carefully as possible, he cut away the bloodied fabric, revealing not just the fresh wound but a map of bruises in various stages of healing across her torso. "What happened to you?" he whispered, though he could guess. He'd seen such marks before, during his time as a deputy marshal in Santa Fe. After cleaning and bandaging the wound, Quentin covered her with a blanket and returned to the main room. He stoked the fire and put coffee on to boil, then went outside to tend to her exhausted mare. As he rubbed down the horse, he noticed fresh hoofprints in the dirt road that ran past his property. Riders had passed by recently, heading toward town. Back inside, Quentin sat at the table with his coffee, his Colt revolver within easy reach, and waited for his unexpected guest to wake. Piper clawed her way back to consciousness slowly, fragments of memory returning like shards of broken glass. The gunshots. The escape. The stranger. Pain radiated from her side as she attempted to sit up, a gasp escaping her dry lips. "I wouldn't move just yet if I were you," came a deep voice from the doorway. Piper froze, her eyes darting to the source. The man from outside stood there, holding a cup of something steaming. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with sun-browned skin and eyes the color of polished oak. His dark hair was longer than was fashionable, tied back at the nape of his neck. Unlike Edmund and his friends, he didn't sport a fancy suit or pomaded mustache. His clothes were simple, well-worn but clean. "Who are you?" she managed, her voice raspy from thirst. "Quentin Payne," he replied, approaching slowly as if she were a skittish colt. "This is my place. You showed up riding half dead and fell off your horse." He offered the cup. "Water, you must be thirsty." Piper eyed the cup suspiciously, but her parched throat won out. She took it with trembling hands, noting for the first time that she was wearing an oversized man's shirt rather than her dress. Reading her expression, Quentin said, "Your dress was ruined with blood. I had to check your wound." He had the decency to look uncomfortable. "I was a field medic during the war, seen worse injuries than yours, but that bullet took a good piece of flesh. You're lucky it just grazed you." "Thank you," Piper said stiffly, pulling the blanket higher despite the pain the movement caused. "I can pay you for your trouble once I reach town." Quentin shook his head. "No need, but you won't be reaching town anytime soon, not with that injury and not with those men looking for you." Fear clutched at Piper's heart. What men? 4 riders passed by a few hours ago. They were asking at the neighboring farms if anyone had seen a woman on a dun mare. He studied her face. "I'm guessing those aren't friends of yours." "No," Piper looked away. "They're not." "Your husband among them?" Quentin asked quietly. Piper's head snapped up. "How did you— Those bruises didn't come from falling off your horse," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "And only a husband or a father tracks a woman that determinedly." He nodded toward her left hand, where a pale band of skin marked where a wedding ring had recently been. "I'm guessing husband." Tears threatened, but Piper blinked them back. She hadn't cried when Edmund had broken her ribs. She wouldn't cry now. "My husband is a wealthy rancher named Edmund James. Those men work for him." She took another sip of water. "I need to keep moving." "If they find me here, they'll kill you for helping me." Quentin's expression hardened. "I've met my share of killers, Mrs. James. Your husband's men don't worry me." He sat in a chair near the bed. "Now, you need rest. We can figure out the rest later." Despite her fear, exhaustion pulled at Piper, the pain in her side dulling to a persistent throb. As her eyes closed, she heard Quentin move to the door. "You're safe here," he said quietly. "I promise." It was the first promise from a man that Piper actually wanted to believe. The next few days passed in a haze of sleep and pain for Piper. Quentin proved to be a surprisingly good nurse, changing her bandages with efficient, impersonal hands and ensuring she drank plenty of broth and water. When fever set in on the second night, he sat by her bedside, placing cool cloths on her forehead and speaking in low, soothing tones through her delirium. Piper caught glimpses of his life. He'd been a Union soldier, then a lawman, before settling on this small ranch. He read poetry and history books by lamplight. He had no wife, no children. Like her, he seemed alone in the world. By the 4th day, Piper was strong enough to sit up and take real food. Quentin had brought the rocking chair from the main room into the bedroom so she could sit comfortably while he changed the bedding. "Your husband's men came back yesterday," he said casually as he tucked fresh sheets around the mattress. Piper's spoon clattered against her bowl. "What?" "Don't worry, I was polite but not particularly helpful." Quentin's mouth quirked into a small smile. "Told them I'd seen a woman riding south toward the border a couple days back. They believed you. One of them didn't seem convinced, but the others were eager to continue the chase. They've been riding hard for days." He finished with the bed and turned to face her. "They'll be back, though. Men like that don't give up easily." Piper set her bowl aside, appetite gone. I should leave. I've brought enough trouble to your door. You're not strong enough yet. Quentin crossed his arms, and I'm not in the habit of sending wounded women out to fend for themselves. You don't understand, Edmund is. She struggled to find words that could convey the danger. He's well connected. The law won't touch him. When he wants something, he takes it, and he doesn't care who gets hurt along the way. And he wants you back. As his property, yes. Piper's hand drifted to her side where the wound was healing. I'd rather die than go back to him. Quentin was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. How long were you married? 3 years. It wasn't always. Piper sighed. My father died leaving debts. Edmund offered to pay them if I married him. He was charming at first, generous, then his business started failing. He began drinking and… She gestured vaguely at her bruised face. So you ran. I tried twice before. He caught me both times. Piper's voice hardened. I won't let there be a third. Quentin nodded slowly. Get some rest. We'll talk more tomorrow. As the days passed, Piper's strength returned gradually. She began helping around the cabin, washing dishes and mending Quentin's shirts despite his protests. She discovered he was a terrible cook and took over that duty as soon as she could stand long enough. In the evenings, they sat by the fire, and sometimes Quentin would read aloud from one of his books, Whitman, Emerson, or stories of far-off places she'd never seen. They settled into an uneasy routine, both aware of the borrowed time they were living on. Quentin made trips into town for supplies, always returning with news of Edmund's men asking questions. They were persistent, offering rewards for information about Piper's whereabouts. One evening, as summer thunderstorms rolled across the valley, Piper finally asked the question that had been on her mind. Why are you helping me? You don't know me. I've brought nothing but trouble to your life. Quentin looked up from the gun he was cleaning, his expression thoughtful. I was married once, he said after a long pause. Her name was Sarah. We were young, just starting out. I was working as a deputy in a rough mining town, and one night a group of drunk prospectors started shooting up the saloon. His hands stilled on the weapon. Sarah was there bringing me supper. A stray bullet caught her in the chest. She died in my arms. I'm so sorry, Piper whispered. After that, I drifted, took more dangerous jobs, didn't much care if I lived or died. He reassembled the gun with practiced movements. Then during the war, I saw too many good men die because no one helped them. I promised myself I'd never walk away from someone who needed help, no matter the cost. He looked directly at her. So that's why. Piper felt something shift inside her, a wall beginning to crumble. In Edmund's world, everything had a price. Kindness was just another form of currency, always with strings attached. But Quentin's help seemed to come without expectations, and that was more foreign to her than the Spanish words she sometimes heard him mutter when he thought she wasn't listening. As July gave way to August, Piper's wound healed to a pink scar and most of her bruises faded. She began venturing outside, feeling the sun on her face for the first time in weeks. Quentin showed her around his small ranch, the vegetable garden behind the cabin, the creek where he fished for trout, the 3 horses he kept in the corral. Her mare had recovered as well, growing sleek and fat on good grass. One morning, Piper woke to find Quentin already gone, a note on the table saying he'd ridden to check his fences and would be back by midday. Restless, she decided to bake bread and perhaps apple pie if there were enough dried apples left in the pantry. She was elbow-deep in flour when a knock came at the door. Piper froze, her heart hammering against her ribs. Quentin never knocked, it was his home after all. She wiped her hands slowly on her apron, eyes darting around for a weapon. Quentin's shotgun hung over the fireplace, but she'd never fired one before. The knock came again, more insistent. Hello, anyone home? Called a woman's voice. Piper relaxed slightly. A woman was less likely to be working for Edmund. Still cautious, she approached the door. Who is it? Martha Wilson from the next property over. I've brought preserves for Quentin. He helped repair our wagon last week. Piper hesitated, then opened the door a crack. A plump, middle-aged woman stood on the porch, holding a basket covered with a checkered cloth. Her friendly face broke into a smile. "Oh, I didn't know Quentin had company. You must be his cousin from back east. He mentioned someone was staying with him." "Yes," Piper said quickly, opening the door wider. "I'm visiting for a while." Martha's eyes widened slightly as she took in Piper's fading bruises, but her smile never faltered. "Well, it's lovely to meet you. Quentin keeps to himself so much, it's good he has family visiting." She handed over the basket. "Wild plum preserves, my specialty. Thank you, that's very kind." Martha glanced over Piper's shoulder at the flour-dusted table. "Making bread, are you? I remember when Quentin first moved here, man could barely boil water without burning it." She laughed heartily. Piper found herself smiling in return. "He's still not much of a cook." "Well, I won't keep you." "Tell Quentin thank you again for the wagon." Martha turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and you might want to know there are strangers asking about a woman in town again, not the same ones as before. These fellows look like proper lawmen." Piper's blood ran cold. "Thank you for the warning." After Martha left, Piper paced the cabin anxiously. If Edmund had enlisted actual lawmen bought them off, more likely then her situation was more desperate than she'd thought. She was still pacing when Quentin returned, dusty from his ride. "I met your neighbor Martha," Piper said without preamble. "She said there are new men in town looking for me. Lawmen?" Quentin's expression darkened. "I heard the same from Ben at the general store, 2 men claiming to be marshals from Santa Fe." He hung his hat on a peg by the door. "But I know every marshal in the territory and these names aren't familiar. Edmund has friends in government. He could have gotten badges for his men." Piper wrapped her arms around herself. "I need to leave, tonight." "And go where?" Quentin asked, his voice gentle but firm. "If they're watching the roads and have men in every town, you won't make it 10 miles. I can't stay here. They'll find me eventually and you'll be arrested for harboring a fugitive, or worse." Quentin stepped closer, close enough that Piper could smell the leather and sage scent of him. "There's another option," he said quietly. "What? We get married." Piper stared at him, certain she'd misheard. "What did you say? If you're my wife, Edmund has no legal claim to you anymore." Quentin ran a hand through his hair, looking uncharacteristically nervous. "It would just be on paper, to protect you. You could stay here as long as you need, then go wherever you want when it's safe." "You would do that for me," Piper whispered, disbelieving. "I told you I help people who need it." He smiled slightly. "Besides, having you here these past weeks. It's been good. The place feels alive again." Piper turned away, overwhelmed. Marriage had been her prison. The idea of entering another, even one as well-intentioned as this, made her stomach twist. "And yet, what choice did she have? I'll think about it," she finally said. That night, Piper lay awake long after Quentin had retired to his bedroll in the main room. His proposal kept replaying in her mind. It was practical, logical even, a marriage of convenience to solve her legal problems. But something in his eyes when he'd suggested it made her wonder if there was more to it, and what about her own feelings? Somewhere between the fever dreams and quiet evenings by the fire, Quentin had become important to her. His steady presence, his unwavering support, the way he looked at her like she was worth protecting, it was all so different from what she'd known with Edmund. By morning, Piper had made her decision. She found Quentin at the corral, brushing down one of his horses. "Yes," she said simply. He turned, brow furrowed in confusion, then understanding dawned. "You're sure?" "No," she admitted, "but I trust you, and that's more than I've been able to say about anyone in a very long time." 2 days later, they rode into the neighboring town of Cedar Springs. A small settlement, Quentin said, was far enough from their home to avoid Edmund's men, but close enough to reach in a day's ride. The local justice of the peace was a friend of Quentin's, an elderly man named Judge Harris who asked no questions about Piper's fading bruises or their hasty wedding. The ceremony was brief, just the necessary words and signatures. Piper wore her newly mended dress, and Quentin had on a clean shirt and his least worn pair of trousers. There were no rings, no witnesses except for the judge's wife, no celebration afterward. They simply rode home in the golden afternoon light, husband and wife in name only. Life continued much as before, with one significant change. Quentin insisted on sleeping in the barn, giving Piper the cabin to herself. "A proper marriage starts with proper courting," he'd said, "and we've done everything backward." September brought cooler weather and news that Edmund's men had moved their search south toward the border. Piper began to hope they might have given up, that her trail had gone cold enough for them to abandon the hunt. One crisp morning, Piper was hanging laundry in the yard when she heard the sound of approaching horses. Her first instinct was fear, but it quickly gave way to curiosity when she saw it was Martha Wilson and several other women from neighboring homesteads. "We've come to welcome you properly," Martha announced, dismounting with surprising agility for a woman of her size. "Quentin told my Henry you two got married, and we decided it was high time you had a proper welcome to our little community." The women, 5 in all, had brought food, small gifts, and no shortage of advice on managing a husband. They spent the afternoon helping Piper put up preserves from Quentin's late garden, sharing stories and laughter. For the first time since her mother's death, Piper felt part of something, accepted without question or judgment. After they left, Piper found herself humming as she prepared supper. When Quentin returned from mending fences, she told him about her visitors. "They think we're truly married," she said, setting plates on the table. "That this is real." Quentin washed his hands in the basin by the door. "Is that a problem?" "No, it's just—" Piper arranged the cutlery with unusual care. "I've been thinking about us, this arrangement." "What about it?" His voice was carefully neutral. "Doesn't seem fair to you. You've given up so much: your home, your privacy, your freedom to find someone you could have a real marriage with." Quentin dried his hands slowly. "And if I said I don't want anyone else?" Piper's heart skipped. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he said, stepping closer, "that this might have started as an arrangement, but my feelings have changed." He paused, searching her face. "Have yours?" The question hung between them, fraught with possibility. Piper thought of all the moments that had led them here, his gentle hands tending her wounds, his voice reading poetry in the firelight, the quiet strength that never demanded but always supported. "Yes," she whispered. "They have." Quentin reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from her face with exquisite gentleness. "May I kiss you, Piper? Not as part of an arrangement, but as a man who's falling in love with you." Instead of answering, Piper closed the distance between them, pressing her lips to his. The kiss was tentative at first, then deepened as Quentin's arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "I never thought I could feel this way again," Quentin murmured, resting his forehead against hers. "After Sarah, I closed that part of myself off, and then you came riding in, half dead and wholly determined." Piper smiled, tears pricking her eyes. "I was so broken when I got here, not just physically." "You were never broken," Quentin said firmly. "Wounded, yes, hurting, yes, but not broken." His hands framed her face. "You're whole to me, Piper, always have been." That night, for the first time, they shared the bed as true husband and wife. Quentin's touch was reverent, careful of her still healing wounds but hungry for the connection between them. Piper discovered what it meant to be loved, truly loved by a good man, her body awakening to pleasure she'd never known possible. Afterward, lying in the circle of his arms, Piper whispered, "I love you." The words, so long forbidden by fear, felt like freedom on her tongue. "And I love you," Quentin replied, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Sleep now, we have time." But time was not on their side. 2 days later, as they were returning from a picnic by the creek, they spotted riders approaching the cabin for men, one of whom Piper recognized instantly even at a distance. "Edmund," she breathed, her entire body going cold. Quentin's hand went to his pistol. "Get behind me." "No," Piper said, straightening her shoulders. "I'm done hiding." They rode forward together to meet the approaching men. Edmund James sat his expensive thoroughbred with the arrogance of a man used to getting his way. his handsome face twisted into an ugly smile when he saw Piper. "There you are, my dear wife," he called. "You've led us on quite a chase." "I'm not your wife anymore, Edmund," Piper replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'm married to Quentin Payne now, legally." Edmund's smile vanished. "A convenient fiction, our marriage was never dissolved." "Actually," Quentin said calmly, "it was. Judge Harris filed the papers himself after our wedding. Abandonment and cruelty were the grounds, I believe." One of Edmund's men muttered something, looking uncomfortable. Edmund silenced him with a glare. "This isn't over. I've invested too much in you to let you go so easily." Edmund's cold eyes shifted to Quentin. "How much, I wonder? Every man has his price." "Not this one," Quentin replied. Edmund laughed humorlessly. "Come now, a struggling rancher like yourself. I could buy this entire valley and still have change to spare." "Your money means nothing here," Piper said. "Leave us alone, Edmund, it's over." For a moment it seemed as though Edmund might actually listen. Then, with lightning speed, he drew his pistol, aiming at Quentin. "If I can't have you, no one will." The shot rang out, but it wasn't Edmund's. From the trees behind them came the sheriff of Cedar Springs and 2 deputies, rifles raised. Edmund's gun arm was bleeding where the sheriff's bullet had grazed him. "Drop the weapon, James," the sheriff ordered. "You're on my land now, and we don't take kindly to men who threaten our neighbors." Outnumbered and outgunned, Edmund and his men had no choice but to surrender. As the sheriff handcuffed them, he explained to a stunned Piper and Quentin that Martha Wilson had sent for him after overhearing one of Edmund's men asking questions in town. "Seems you've made some good friends here," the sheriff said with a nod to Piper. "Mrs. Wilson was quite insistent that I bring plenty of men. Said you were a decent woman who deserved better than what life had dealt you so far." As they watched Edmund and his men being led away, Piper leaned against Quentin, suddenly exhausted. "Is it really over?" "Yes," he said, his arm tightening around her shoulders. "He'll face charges for attempting to kill a former lawman. With the sheriff's testimony, he'll be locked away for years." That night, as they lay together in the quiet darkness of their home, Piper traced the lines of Quentin's face with gentle fingers. "Thank you," she whispered. "For everything?" "I should be thanking you," he replied, catching her hand and pressing a kiss to her palm. "You brought life back to this place, to me. I was so afraid when I came here, not just of Edmund, but of living, of trusting anyone ever again." Piper's voice caught. "I felt like everything good in me had been broken beyond repair." "You're the strongest person I know," Quentin said, his eyes reflecting the moonlight streaming through the window. "Nothing about you is broken, Piper Payne. You're whole, perfect exactly as you are." In the years that followed, their small ranch prospered. They added rooms to the cabin as their family grew, first a son with Quentin's serious eyes, then twin girls with Piper's stubborn chin. The bruises faded completely, though sometimes Piper still woke from nightmares, reaching for Quentin in the darkness. On those nights, he would hold her close and whisper the words that had become their promise. "You're whole to me. Always have been, always will be," and in his arms, Piper knew it was true. The broken woman who had ridden into his life that bloody spring day was gone, replaced by someone stronger, someone who had learned that even the deepest wounds could heal with time and love. The scars remained, they always would, but they were proof of survival, not brokenness. In the wild, unforgiving West, they had found in each other not just shelter, but home.